As it was said on Sunday, the question's been posed many times. What is your relationship with life now? But to be more explicit, it can be asked, what is your relationship with the 3 levels of life now? The nitty-gritty level of cause and effect, action and reaction. What is your relationship with karma now? And what about that level of spirit, or the occult level? What is your relationship with your creativity, your intuition, your dreams now? And that level, subjective level, where all things are interrelated. What is your relationship with oneness, sometimes called our God Self now? And if all these 3 levels of life can come together in stories, how do they come together in us? There's a story of an old woman. She had struggled in poverty all her life, but she'd been a good woman, giving alms and doing good works whenever she could. But she had one great regret. She had had no child. She had longed for a son or a daughter, and prayed hard and long for this. But now she was a widow, unable to work, left to go to the marketplace every day to beg a little food from the vendors who set up their stalls in the village. Sometimes she was given an over-ripe peach or an apricot. But then one day, when she went, as usual, all the stall holders were disgruntled because the king had put up their taxes, and they were not about to give any largesse that day. So she was empty-handed, thinking that she would have to return with an empty stomach. But then she noticed a little stall, a little separate from the others, manned by someone who looked as poor as she was. But when she approached, she noticed that laid out on the stall there were 7 dates. Now the old man said to her, after she begged her alms from him, "Yes, choose whichever date you will." Well, 6 of the dates were a little dried up, and the other was quite plump and juicy looking. So she chose this date for herself and went off home. But when she came home, the date was so shiny and plump and juicy, she couldn't bear to eat it. So she placed it on her windowsill in the sun and went off to see if there was any other possibility of having something to put in her stomach for that day. But nothing was to be had, except when she was walking back home along the road, who should she happen to meet but the old man who had manned the stall with the dates. He approached her and offered her a large, ripe olive. Now this old man was none other than the prophet Elijah, who comes in many guises to those who are ready and in need. So the old woman bit into the olive, and to her great surprise, inside, instead of a pit, there was a gold coin. Now the old woman hastened to try to find the old man, to return the gold coin to him, but Elijah was nowhere to be found. So, feeling glad in her heart that she had now such a gift and a blessing, and deep in herself realizing that this old man must have been the great prophet Elijah, she headed back to her house. But in the meantime, the sun had shone through the window onto the large, ripe and juicy date, and it swelled and swelled, and popping open like a seed, a small being emerged, no bigger than a finger. This little being wearing a little garment of many colors, the colors of the rainbow. Now this little being stretched herself, and seeing a reel of cotton on the windowsill, she let it out and let herself down. But when she looked around, this house was dusty and dirty. So she gathered a few little strands from the floor, which she made into a broom, and she set to work. She dusted and swept and dusted and swept until the little house gleamed. Now when the old woman came home and entered to see her shining house, she looked around and said, "Oh, blessing upon blessing, who has done this?" And a little voice said, "Mother, I did." And the old woman looked around until she espied this small being. And the old woman said, Did you call me mother?" The little being said, "Yes, mother." "What is your name?" said the old woman. The little being said, "I have not been given a name." And so the old woman thought and thought, and she gave her the name of Catania. Now, with the gold coin, the old woman was rich enough to be able to feed them well without thought of begging. But the first thing she did was to go and give recompense to all the merchants who had given her free fruit and food, and they lived well. But the little being called Catania loved to sing as she worked. And she sang with a voice that was equally as powerful and strong as any fully grown being. And her songs rang out and brought joy to everyone who passed, reaching the village even, lifting the hearts of the merchants who struggled there with their taxes and their daily hardships. But then one day it so happened that the prince of the realm was riding by on his horse and heard the sound of Catania's voice. He instantly and immediately fell in love. Riding back to the palace, he told his father, the king, that he had found the one that he wished to marry. The king was very pleased and asked, "Who was this?" And the prince said, "It is the one whose song I heard on the road today." So a messenger was immediately sent to the old woman's house, stating that the prince wanted to marry whoever it was who sang, and invited the old woman and the singer back to the palace. Now the messenger came, stating that they had been given the task of making a gown suitable for the palace for the mother and the being with the voice. But Catania, when offered this, said, "No, I will wear my dress of many colors." And so it happened. The old woman, in the dress prepared by the messenger, and little Catania riding in the pocket of her mother, wearing her gown of rainbow colors. When they arrived at the palace, the king greeted the old woman and asked, "Where is your daughter?" And out of the old woman's pocket came Catania. "Here I am," she said. The prince said, "Even though you are so tiny, is it you who sings like the nightingale? And if so, will you sing us, me, a song?" And so Catania sang a song which no one had heard before, trilling out and thrilling the hearts of the prince, the king, and all who were there. Of course, the prince said, "This is the one I will marry." And indeed, he did. What is your relationship with the three levels of existence? And if all these levels meet in the stories of life, no matter what story it is, how then do they meet in us? Is there a meeting place? Recognizing that what it is that is called the God Self, that place of oneness, is one of those levels of existence. And the question that's asked is, where do these three levels meet? If it's not in the level of oneness, where is it? Thank you.